Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. The Mariners' magical season has finally come to a close. It's kind of weird because it feels like with their season coming to an end, it feels like we got nobody else playing. But the Seahawks are underway. Still, the Kraken have just really begun their regular season. The Rain played their playoff game this Sunday. We finally know who their opponent's going to be. So it's 3 of 7, but I don't know. It feels like, with some of our teams done for the year, heading into their offseason or currently in their offseason, it feels like things are quieter than normal. Maybe it's just because of the noise that they've made, i.e. the Mariners. We think about this. We just look at some of the teams that are not playing right now. The Mariners just ended their season, having ended their 21-year postseason drought. The Storm, Sue Bird retired, and they went out in the playoffs. The Sounders, 13-season postseason streak came to an end. So there's a lot going on. And with the Seawolves just came off of a title game loss. So, our teams are doing well. I can't complain about that. It's not like anybody's necessarily tanking right now. The team that we thought that was going to tank, the Seahawks, haven't been doing that. So, in large part due to a pretty outstanding rookie class so far. So, Bell, why don't we shift over to our Mariners? We're going to try to hide the sadness from the Mariners loss, and we'll get into some Seahawks stuff led by our young rookies here as they took on Arizona on Sunday.
Right. So as you said, we took on Arizona. Arizona came to town. They played at Lavelle Field, and luckily the Seahawks pulled out a win. They won that one 19-9. Our offensive players of the game here, we went with the same person, and I'll just go ahead and say it was Kenneth Walker III. So I went ahead and doubled down after, of course, seeing that you had picked him, but there was really no other option for me, considering that it felt like the offense ran through him, and no other player really got as many yards as Kenneth did. So that was my reasoning for choosing him. So I'll go ahead and hand off to you so you can explain yours.
Yeah, with having Rashad Penny out for the year now, it's tough because, again, I think we talked about this last week, having no clear standout guy to an extent since Marshawn Lynch, having it was like Thomas Rawls, CJ Procise, Chris Carson, it feels like it's like those corny graphics they do on Monday Night Football where it would be like a graveyard or whatever and Seahawks running backs, and you'd see all the headstones with all these former running backs. It's been a tough ride since Marshawn, right? And even Marshawn came back for the end of the year. I believe it was 19, so it's been a tough little ride at the running back position. That continues with Rashad Penny because at the end of this past year and really as the season's kind of started, he's looked good, after dealing with injury after injury, and now back again, it's an injury and it's a season ending one. So, everybody who was happy with the Ken Walker pick when it happened, go ahead. You can celebrate. I was wrong. These things happen. I didn't mind the pick itself. It was where it was at.
Sure.
But hey, again, some of these guys get paid to do these, make these decisions. So that works out. As well as before we even continue, I know we'll talk about the rest of them on the defensive side of the ball as well. But this rookie class, we look at Charles Cross, Ken Walker, Abraham Lucas, Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen, all played significant impacts in this game, let alone the entirety of the season. So it's you kind of look for that class that some people get. Look at some of the past ones that Seattle's had, drafting Russell Wilson, drafting Earl Thomas, drafting Richard Sherman. Some of these different classes that were really key, and this, so far looks like it's going to be one of them. Walker, like you said, I don't think there's anybody on offense that really stood out like him. He's a guy that has carried the load in college. He, started out at Wake Forest, transferred to Michigan State, won the Doug Walker Award, I believe it was the Earl Campbell Award last year, and had a huge workload. So him being the lead back right now makes a ton of sense, and he should be able to really sustain this sort of thing. I had him in one league in fantasy, and he paid dividends, but I was just on the cautious side of things in another one where I couldn't pick him up because somebody already had him. I picked up DJ Dallas because, through the preseason, DJ Dallas had a good showing, and he didn't do much. So it really looks like Ken Walker is going to be your bell cow sort of guy. And I mean, if any this past few games, even with the Saints and now this, I think he even had some good runs against Detroit. If these are any indication of what he can do, I think Seattle should be just fine at running back.
I agree, and especially with our standing being 3-3, I think that there are other teams that we expected to have way better records that are also on with that 3-3 record. So we're not looking too bad. I'll move on to our defensive players of the game for the sake of being different this week and not going with Tariq Woolen again. I went with Jordan Brooks, who had 11 total tackles on the game, 6 solo and 5 assisted. So just a big contributor to part of why Kyler Murray wasn't able to be successful. So that was why I went with him.
That makes sense. And I know, at least from what I've seen and from some of the guys that I know, Jordan Brooks has received some criticism. And I get that, but it's tough to go from Bobby Wagner, who's a surefire Hall of Famer, to, a guy who's in his second or third year now. I went with Ryan Neal just because he kind of filled up the stat sheet: 7 tackles, 6 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection, 1 QB hit. I feel like I would have also gone with Tariq Woolen, but for the sake of being different, and I feel like we would have talked about him anyway, I went with Ryan Neal, who filled up the stat sheet pretty well. Woolen, I mean, what can we say? They showed a graphic during the game.
Yes.
Like the side-by-side comparison with Richard Sherman's rookie year, really similar in height. We're 1 draft pick difference. I believe Woolen was 153, Sherman was 154. Both wide receivers converted to cornerbacks from college. Both guys kind of seemed as a bit of a project coming out of college. And Richard Sherman had 4 interceptions in his rookie year. Tariq Woolen already through 4. Well, now it's what we're
the
6
graphic
games through.
said 3,
yeah, but it hadn't been updated yet, so they're tied,
right.
And Woolen can only go up from here. So, granted, the Seahawks defense has had its coverage lapses. Picks are a big thing, and I know like a guy like Trevon Diggs for the Cowboys gets burned a decent amount, but he gets picks, and oftentimes they're in key moments. So, I mean, Woolen will continue to learn. And that's the big thing. But if a guy like Richard Sherman is endorsing this guy, it can only mean good things, And I know he's typically a defensive coach, and he turns things around. I mean, 9 points against this Arizona defense. I know they're without DeAndre Hopkins, James Conner didn't play, whatever. They got a lot of talent on that offense. To only give up 3 field goal, a field goal and then a punt that bad coverage. It was to give up only 3 points to that offense, technically not taking away that touchdown. It's a pretty good showing. So with a coach like Pete Carroll, who is a DB coach, a former DB himself, I can only expect greater and greater things from Tariq Woolen. Quentin Jefferson, his teammates, said something. I don't know if I'm quite there yet, but he said he's a walking gold jacket. I'm like, God damn, dude, this is 6 games through his rookie year. That's high praise. But I mean, if he keeps it up, it's going to be hard to disagree with, So it just means good things. I know that when we went through the offseason, even before the draft, I looked at guys like Artie Burns, like getting Justin Coleman back. You're like, okay, these should be solid corners to have. But now you've got Bryant forced the fumble that Woolen recovered. In this game. So both of those guys have been making impacts. The coverage will come there as they continue to learn and to grow in this league, but they're making plays, and that's all that matters right now, really. Because, again, I know they're second in the NFC West. Like you said, everybody except for Arizona is 3-3 now in the NFC West. The Rams continue to struggle. I don't care if they won this past week. They've struggled. They lost their left tackle to Joe Noteboom for the season. Matt Stafford is doing whatever the hell Matt Stafford is doing, so they're not the juggernaut, at least at this point in the season, that they were last year. So you find yourself in some sort of weird contention spot, right? Where it's like, oh, we're kind of doing things right now. When a lot of us, I didn't see tanking necessarily. I was thinking at least 7 games for wins wise, but you're around half that already. So I don't know. When we looked at the beginning of the year, this Chargers game that's next week, I was worried about this because I'm like, oh, Justin Herbert could be an MVP candidate. You've got all these guys, but now injuries hit them. Herbert was dealing with injuries as well. They don't look like this invincible team. So I'm not saying you can go in and smash them, but I feel like you've got a much better chance, So it's been really interesting, and these rookies have been a big part of that. On the cornerback spot, on the offensive side of the ball too, with the tackles and Lucas and Cross, Ken Walker, it's been pretty incredible. Not only Woolen, because obviously we're talking mainly about Woolen right now, but just the majority of these rookies. I'm kind of stunned. I don't know about you, but it's been pretty wild to see all this.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Richard Sherman was backing Tariq Woolen, but it's not just him. It's the whole rookie draft class that he's really giving kudos to. So it's looking promising. And I know I mentioned this last week, but that Pete Carroll 10 wins for the season, who knows? It's kind of looking like a possibility right now. We'll move on to some, unless you had something to say.
No, I mean, just thinking about that, it's kind of crazy to think about. 10 wins. I mean, it's not necessarily out of earshot, so hey, we'll see.
Yeah, definitely promising as the season moves on. We'll look at some injury news here for the game against Arizona. Inactives were Artie Burns, Tease Tabor, Al Woods, Gabe Jackson, and Penny Hart. And then there were luckily no injuries against Arizona, at least nothing that has been reported yet. So that's positive news. Moving on to some team notes here. I know we've already been talking about him, but Tariq Woolen again making history. He becomes the 7th player in franchise history and just the 3rd rookie since 2000 to record an interception in 4 consecutive games. And he's also the first rookie since 1970 to record both an interception and opponent fumble recovery in consecutive games. So
that's 52 years. So God.
Yes. Yeah. So it's impressive. I know that, again, I feels like we've gone with Tariq Woolen as defensive player of the game almost every week. And sometimes we go differently, but he's consistent. And so it's hard not to think of him every week.
Yeah. I mean, it's with the graphic too, just to go back to it. I'm sorry. The graphic, it was like, what was it? It was like history repeating itself or whatever. I'm like, hey man, this is Richard Sherman's. I mean, I'm sure they're really different in demeanor. I don't expect Tariq Woolen to go and trash talk anybody, but it is interesting to look at the size. Pete's always been a big, lanky corner sort of guy. We look at guys like Brandon Browner, like Trey Flowers. They've always been big sort of corners, and some of those you missed on. But this is a guy that they were excited just to draft. I was kind of more focused on Bryant. I figured Woolen would be a guy like a fringe roster guy, and he'd make his way up, but some people, I mean, not to use it wrong, and I'll probably sound dumb. I mean, some people have that dog in him, and he's just continued to show that week in and week out, regardless of who we pick for Defensive Player of the Week. He's a talking point every week, and that shows up with the coaches, So, yeah, I mean, the 1970 thing, the records, hey man, he continues to ball. This rookie class will be one of the better ones, if not, one of the better ones in Seahawks history.
Yeah, and for him to be compared to someone who was considerably one of the best corners in the game is insane. So hopefully it only goes up from here. Moving on to some league news here. On October 11th, it was reported that the photographer that Davante Adams had pushed filed a police report. So according to the Kansas City Police Department, the cameraman claims he was injured by Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams when he was pushed to the ground. If you didn't see the video already, the cameraman ran right in front of Davante as he was going into the tunnel, and Davante's instinct was to push him. So apparently the NFL, it can't actually do anything about it right now as far as giving Davante any sort of suspension or any kind of repercussion for that. But they wait until the Kansas City Police Department adjourns everything. So moving on to some more news here. Amazon has hired Marshawn Lynch. The former Seahawk will assist Thursday night football coverage with pre-produced segments, including one with an alligator. So I think we mentioned this before about Marshawn Lynch possibly joining the TV crew, but he's an entertaining guy. So I could definitely see this being a positive thing for them.
I don't know what the hell he's going to do with an alligator, but anything Marshawn Lynch does TV-wise or post-playing career-wise is always must-watch. So whatever Amazon's going to make this guy do with an alligator, Thursday Night Football has been hard to watch. I think anybody that watches football can agree. What was it? Washington and Chicago last week was like 12-7. The week before it was Denver and Indianapolis, and you and I have dreaded having Denver on Monday Night Football tonight. So it's been a tough break, but adding a guy like Marshawn should help with that. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah. Like you said, last week's game, I don't even think they scored a touchdown. So it was brutal to watch. Yeah. And hey, let's throw an alligator in the mix and see what we can do. Moving on here to some news on October 13th. Snyder has dirt on other NFL owners. Reportedly, the Commanders owner, Dan Snyder, knows enough secrets to blow up his peers, the league office, and Roger Goodell, saying the NFL is a mafia. I feel like this has been going on for quite some time, so I don't think it's going to be the last time we hear about it. But of course, as news develops, we'll be here to report it. On the 14th, it was reported that Kamara is facing a $10 million lawsuit. The Saints running back is being sued over alleged battery outside of a Las Vegas nightclub back in February. Also on the 14th, as if we couldn't have any more of Deshaun Watson, a new civil lawsuit was filed against Deshaun less than 2 months after settling 23 lawsuits accusing him of sexual misconduct. The new lawsuit was filed against the Browns QB recently, and it's not supposed to affect his current status with the NFL. And of course, he's serving that 11-game suspension, and it sounds like there won't be any additional repercussion to that. On the 16th, today, the Titans have an agreement to build a 1.7 million square foot domed stadium. The agreement is in place with Nashville Mayor John Cooper to build the new stadium, and it will have, like I said, a dome, making it possible to host a Super Bowl and other major events.
That is not some. Well, it's interesting too because maybe I know this is just a football thing, but and football is played in all weather. But you know, if Nashville can build, Tennessee, whatever, Nashville, can build a dome stadium, it just shows you some other sports city should be able to build a dome. I know there's a lot of money that goes into that, but I mean, Nashville, I don't even think they necessarily need that. You know, hey, whatever.
Sounds like they just want to be in the running to be able to host, but
yeah, I know there's a lot that goes into that. So hey, all power to them for that. That'll be really interesting to see how that goes.
Transitioning back to our Seahawks here, like we said, they have a regular season record of 3-3. They're second in the NFC West, and their next matchup is next Sunday, October 23rd, at the Los Angeles Chargers, and that's a 1:25 p.m. start.
That one will be really interesting. Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. Just, really interesting. Obviously, Justin Herbert, who knows if Keenan Allen will be back. Austin Eckler, that defense is banged up, that had a lot of free agency signings. I mean, I think Khalil Mack's still around, and I don't like playing him anyway. So, right. That'll be a really interesting matchup on the road there in Los Angeles. So, yes, now we have to talk about this past tough series against the Astros in the ALDS. Games 1 through 3, unfortunately, the Mariners would not be able to advance or force a game 4, getting swept in 3 games against Houston. So let's take a look. We have to reluctantly take a look. So game 1 at Houston, a crushing loss, 8-7. Player of the game, center fielder Julio Rodriguez, 2 hits, 3 runs, 2 RBIs, and 1 walk. Julio really shows out in game 1 of the ALDS there. Really tough one as Seattle was able to jump all over future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander, who's had a great year despite really kind of getting up there in age. The Mariners had been playing really generally horribly against him throughout the regular season, and this was going to be a tough matchup, but they were able to jump all over Verlander And unfortunately, a Jordan Alvarez 3-run homer to walk it off in the bottom of the ninth crushed that. And I didn't really want to think about it that way, but I was concerned that this might be a bad omen for the rest of the series. Obviously, it was game one, and the Mariners have been a really resilient team throughout the year, even in the playoffs, obviously, against Toronto in game two. So you would have figured, hey, maybe not so much you worry about this, but just the way that was just kind of a crushing loss. Game two at the Astros, a 4-2 loss. Play the game, right fielder Mitch Haniger, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk. Another tough one. I know Seattle was able to jump out to a 2-1 lead at one point, but another Alvarez homer throughout the game put Houston ahead, and they never looked back. And it just kind of seemed like this guy. I talked to Bell about it. I think it was before game three. Where, you know, when the Storm played Las Vegas in the playoffs, it was all Chelsea Gray, and Chelsea Gray was just kind of giving everybody in Seattle nightmares, and we just couldn't get away from what she was doing. It was like all these monster threes, and then it was Jordan Alvarez in this one. It was just like, can we get away from this guy, please? And they were able to get away from him in game three. He didn't do any damage in this one, but game three is a game that'll probably haunt my brain for a while. Game three in Seattle, the first playoff game in the Pacific Northwest in the building that is T-Mobile Park, now formerly Safeco Field. An 18-inning, yes, 18. That's two full-length games. 18-inning loss, 1-0. I thought the 13-inning game that Seattle won 1-0 against the Yankees back in July was a long one, but yes, a 1-0 loss to end the Mariners season in the ALDS, unfortunately. Player of the game, starting pitcher George Kirby. Kirby, Nintendo character or not, 7 innings pitched, 6 hits allowed, 2 hit batters, 5 strikeouts. I wanted to highlight the 2 hit batters there and the 6 hits allowed because you can see the issues for the 24-year-old, but he still went through 6 innings. Was able to end his outing with a really high fastball against Jose Altuve to get him swinging. Stared him down a little bit. Again, this is a 24-year-old who didn't pitch in AAA at all and has come in and contributed for this Mariners ball club all year, gave them a great chance to win it, was an ace-like performance, and Seattle couldn't get things done offensively. So, you know, before we get to players of the ALDS on our side of things, yes, it's very tough, and I'll speak to you candidly about it. You know, it's very tough to, you know, end the drought, to show all the resilience you have, to play well against teams above 500, to beat the defending champion Braves in a 3-game series, you know, to play okay against Houston throughout the regular season. You went 7-12, which, you know, obviously under 500, but you didn't get basically swept like you did in 2018, where you went 1-for-18 against them, you know. You win game 1 of the wild card series against Toronto, who has plenty of firepower up and down the lineup. You shut them out in that game. And then that incredible 7-run comeback in game 2 to send you to the ALDS. You know, I want to remind people the goal for this season was just to win, was to clinch a playoff spot and to end the drought. That was all it was, you know, and I think when you saw the sort of potential that this team had, I remember in the home opener at T-Mobile Park, you stomped Houston. I think it was like 11-0, and that was against Verlander, you know. But there's something I've highlighted all year was the offensive inconsistency. You know, you needed better performance from some guys. I've been critical of Julio through part of the postseason. I mean, he had that great game 1, but really was relatively quiet. He had a double that was just a foot away from being a homer in the bottom of the 8th inning. You think, shoot, that would have been it. You know, it's tough. I won't sit here and lie to you. It was tough, you know, sitting there in the auxiliary press box with Bell, with Matt, with Liv, with Big O. It was tough. It was really tough. And, you know, I'll think about those long, drowning 18 innings for a while, you know, being the first one at the media check-in. Yes, the first one before any of the other guys that do sports in this city. I won't say names, but you know who they are. 6:30 in the morning to be there, to show that dedication, to be on the field, to talk to my buddy Rajay Davis. You remember Rajay Davis? Just being there with the media guys, you know, being there with his team, the great energy, the rally towels, Felix Hernandez throwing out the first pitch. To have him be involved was awesome. Just the energy and the fact that the large majority of the 47,690 stayed through the 18 innings, the 18 long dragging innings. The fact that those fans stayed and chanted for the team after they had lost means a lot. I would love to look back at that as a classic in a good way, but I'll still remember that game a lot. Whenever this team wins the World Series here in the next few years, I'll think back about that because that was the first step. I think about if we were going to compare it, the Seahawks in 2012, when they fell against Atlanta, they kind of, showed flashes throughout the year, but they needed a couple more pieces. And they got that, and they reloaded the next year. I'm not guaranteeing a World Series win next year, comparing them. Mariners, Seahawks 2012 getting to the divisional round and then winning the World Series, the Super Bowl the next year. I'm not going to say that, but this team really isn't that far off. You keep the pitching the same. Maybe you get a fifth starter if that's available and if that's an option, and if it wouldn't, upset the team too much because you'd probably push Marco Gonzalez out of the rotation. But you add another bat. Hell, maybe you somehow attract Aaron Judge here. Don't know how that's going to happen. If you could make it happen, shoot, I wouldn't mind. This team wasn't necessarily supposed to get Robbie Ray, so who knows? With the shift band, maybe you see these big comeback years from a guy like Jesse Winker. You see better years offensively all around the board. Adam Frazier had a relatively tough year at the plate, but I looked at it with Bell, right? We look at this. At least we're going to go through the defensive point of view. Cal Raleigh had a career year, and he is essentially a rookie this year, and he can only get better, right? Third base, Eugenio Suarez I know Bella and Matt and I were frustrated that he wasn't able to play the majority of those extra innings on a defensive switch as a pinch runner from Dylan Moore. But, the year he had great defensively and 30-plus homers. Hard to be mad at that. JP Crawford, JP's locked in. He's been a guy that he had struggles at the plate and he had a down year defensively, but I know that's not what he does. He's a Gold Glover, and I'm expecting him to return to that. Second base, Adam Frazier. We'll get there. I can figure that out. We're going to look at a lot of these players in the offseason and have sort of player profile articles for them, so keep an eye out for that. But second base is maybe somewhere I'm looking at. But I know that he had flashes throughout the year, and maybe he's able to come back. Ty France, Gold Glover, should be a Gold Glover this year. All-star, one of the best hitters in baseball. Had a tough second half of the year, but we've seen what he can do. Left field is interesting. Need a bounce-back year from Winker. Maybe you put Haggerty there. We saw what Haggerty's been able to do this past year. It sucks that he was injured. Couldn't play in any of the playoff games. Jared Kelenic, maybe he steps in left field there. We saw what he can do in September. Just need to be able to carry that throughout a full season. Julio Rodriguez. Do I need to say anything about Julio? I don't think I do. The guy's 21. Remember, to age people and to make myself look like a fool. Him and I are the same age. To see what he's been able to do and to know that he's only going to get better, sky's the limit. Don't need to really touch on that too much. Right field's where it gets interesting, though. Mitch Haniger's contract is up. He said he wants to be back. But again, something I keep talking about is availability. If you're not going to be in the lineup for me the majority of the year, and if I can potentially get an upgrade in free agency, why wouldn't I? Right? But we've seen what Mitch can be. In the 2 seasons he's played the most games, he's been in the MVP conversation. So that one, right field's a tough one. But you look at the majority of that, you look at the bullpen, Los Bomberos, all that stuff. Matt Brash is really young. You've got Paul Seawald's been Paul Seawald for the majority of the year. Diego Castillo had some tough. Andres Munoz is like 23. So this team, the point being is that this team is in a great position going forward to compete for years, not just this year. It's not like when you had excuse me, all that smoke in those 18 innings was not good for me. Excuse me. Oh, Nelson Cruz and Robinson Cano are aging. And I always liken it to, in those years before you really committed to the rebuild, you were putting Band-Aids on a boat with a bunch of holes in it. It'll help you, sure, for a little bit, but in the long run, you needed at one point to just tear the thing down and start anew. And they've done that, and you're seeing the success in that. You've got a guy like Luis Castillo wrapped up. yes, I know Robbie Ray gave up the homer to Alvarez and he had his moments, but overall, it's better to have him on this roster than to have a hole that you're trying to fill. George Kirby, what can I say about 24-year-old George Kirby, who will only continue to get better? Logan Gilbert, for a good amount of this season, looked like your ace, and that's a lot, considering that you had Robbie Ray on this team. So, bottom line, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it's tough to see that, but you've got a bright future. And I'm not saying that, because of what you had in the farm system. Competing teams give up pieces of their farm system, and that's what you did this year with Luis Castillo. So the future is really bright for these guys. And, Curtis asked me how I'm taking the loss. It's been tough. And I'll think about it, but you're in a great position going forward. And I mean, they did more than I could ask. I just needed them to get to the playoffs and break that damn drought. I didn't really care much else of what you did, but you kicked Toronto out of the dance. You really took Houston to the limit in all 3 games, and honestly, like you and Curtis and I were all kind of talking about, I don't see Cleveland or New York taking Houston very far in the ALCS. I don't. I think we gave them their best punch. So, and with Philly and San Diego across the way, if somehow we were able to make it to the LCS, and I feel like our chances would be good against either team. I know Cleveland's been hot, but say we made the World Series, I think you could take Philly or San Diego. You played Philly early on in the year. You didn't have everybody at their full strength like you did throughout the second half. San Diego, you handled San Diego. So that's my long piece about it. But all in all, the fact that I got to have this thing on here, this postseason logo, means a lot. So I'll wear this thing for a while until we get our postseason 2023 hats. But yeah, that's my piece. I've been sitting here talking for a lot. People don't want to see my face too often. Bill, why don't give me your thoughts on it?
It was brutal. I think it was even more brutal to see Kirby having such a good game and then just our offense not be able to reciprocate a scoring run. So like you said, for those 18 innings, it was just our offense struggled. And you mentioned not having Suarez. That, reflecting back, I wondered if, and honestly thought that he would have made a difference in those extra innings. So it's tough. Going into the series, I really strongly felt that there was no way we were going to get swept. And so it hurts, it stings. And it feels like that momentum shift, like you said, it feels like it totally happened in that game 1. I can't remember who the pitcher was to end the game there, but
it was Robbie.
Was it Robbie? Okay, because
Yep.
I remember Jordan Alvarez saying that he just watched a video of him like previously pitching and then knew exactly what he needed to do. So it's brutal and it hurts. And that game 2 loss actually made game 1 sting a little bit more for me because it felt like it should have been in our grasp and that was our game. So yeah, it's tough, but like you said, we have a lot to look forward to and our guys are only young and we'll get to it here, but not everybody was fully healthy. You mentioned Haggerty, and of course, now we know about Raleigh and his struggles with injury.
Yeah.
So
God,
it can only get better.
Yeah, and to your point, with the injury things, I know some of these were throughout the year, but I think we go through that, go through the lineup again. Raleigh, we're going to get to his injury here, but he missed time throughout the year. Gino missed time. JP missed a little bit, not too much. JP, good on him for being healthy a good amount of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Frazier missed too much time. Ty missed time. We dealt with that wrist stuff, and I hope he's able to, heal up through the offseason. Winker dealt with some stuff, and he ended the season with a neck injury. Haggerty out, obviously. Julio dealt with some stuff for a while, right, with his back. Mitch dealt with stuff. So, yeah, you were banged up throughout the year. Luckily, your pitchers were able to stay healthy, which is pretty incredible. With the work rate of some of these guys, to have them, I think all of your rotation stay off the IL, that's a big deal. So, props on them. But, yeah, you dealt with some injuries throughout the year where maybe you find yourself in a higher spot. Maybe you host wildcard games. Who knows? But Yeah, long-winded rant. In short, yes, it's tough to end the way you did, but the journey was incredible. It's the best season I've watched in my life, um, baseball wise. I don't know how we compare it to everything else. I'd have to sit down. But yeah, things only get better for these guys. So let's get to players of the ALDS. I went with George. I mean, just with the past start, he was incredibly lights out. He became the first player since like 1868 to be a rookie and to record a save and start a game in, I believe, the divisional series in baseball. I could be wrong on that. Alex Mayer does great with the stats. It was something like that. But George was excellent, to be put in an elimination game spot and to deliver like he did was just downright incredible. So great on him. Bell, with the Cal, I mean, the numbers don't look great, but I feel like it doesn't really matter about the numbers. What did we go with Cal here for?
Yeah, it was the heart, really. Raleigh caught 236 pitches from 9 different pitchers over the course of that 6 hours and 22-minute game, and all with a broken thumb and several torn ligaments in his hand. So, just a warrior. And I went with him because just full on heart and full on just. There was a time in the game where his like splint came off and he just replaced it and then went right back to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the splint, I was like, ooh, that can't be good. But then hearing post game the broken thumb and the torn ligaments, and like you said, playing the catcher position, 236 pitches. What a guy.
Yeah.
What a guy. So, um, and then hopefully, whether it's Tom Murphy or someone else that's backing him up in the catcher tandem this upcoming year can give him some relief, because I know he caught a lot of games this year, and Casale didn't really work out. Terrenz kind of lost his bat.
Yeah.
Tom Murphy was out for the year pretty early on. So yeah, hopefully we can get a tandem where we can kind of lighten his load this upcoming season. So yeah, it's tough. We'll have a season in review next week where we might need a whole episode to just break all this down. So we'll figure that out. But season in review for our Mariners, who finished the regular season with a 90-win, 72-loss season. They swept Toronto 2-0 in the wild card series. They get swept by the Astros in the ALDS. But all in all, just a great year for our baseball club. So normally we'd switch over to our Storm or our Sounders, but the Storm, everything's relatively quiet still. With the Sounders, we're going to do our season review next week just because there's so much going on, with the Mariners and the Seahawks. We don't want to make this an hour and a half long episode. We don't need to do that. So we'll get to Sounders next week. We headed over to our hockey team, who began their regular season, played the first 3 games, and have a game tonight at home at Climate Pledge Arena. So, Bell, why don't we look at the first 3 games of the 2022 Kraken season?
Yeah, so they kicked it off on October 12th at the Anaheim Ducks. Unfortunately, that was a 5-4 loss in overtime. Player of the game there is Maddie Beniers, who had 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, 4 shots, 1 hit, 1 block, and 1 takeaway. Hell of a stat line there. We move on to our October 13th game, where they welcomed the home opener here at Climate Pledge, and that was against the LA Kings, and they won 4-1. Or that wasn't actually. I'm sorry. That was at the LA Kings, and they won 4-1. Player of the game forward Alex Wenberg with 1 goal, 1 point, a 2+, minus, and 1 shot. And then the home opener on the 15th against the Las Vegas Golden Knights, which was unfortunately a somewhat brutal loss, 5-2. Our player of the game there is Andrew Burakovsky with 2 assists, 2 points, 2 shots, and 1 hit. Unfortunately, Charles missed the opener because we were at that very long, unfortunate Mariners loss. So anything that stood out to you in those first 3 games of the season?
Yeah, I mean well, I guess in the positive light of things, the power play looks great. Power play is a lot better than last year, where it was like, why are we even, power play is supposed to be a man or 2-man advantage. Looked like last year you were playing against more people as opposed to less people on the ice. Power play has been better. The offensive attack has been better. You've got elite finishers like Burakovsky. Matty Beniers looks like Matty Beniers is 19 years old. We talk about Julio. Beniers is 19. That doesn't make me feel great.
That's amazing.
Burakovsky having Bjorkstrand, these elite level finishers on your offense is going to do wonders for you. And I figured it would. Now, the defensive side of things is where the issue is here. You look at that 5-4 loss in overtime in game 1 of the year, just defensive mistakes, not being able to clear the puck properly out of your own D zone, setting your defender, your netminder up for failure. And against the Kings, Martin Jones did great, but then against Vegas, kind of the same thing. I know after the overtime loss in Anaheim, there was criticism of Philip Grubauer, and that was a lot of the last year. A lot of people who might not have they don't keep up with the Kraken as much. They don't watch the game as much. They don't maybe pay attention to what we're doing with our coverage. Everything's on Grubauer. You want to blame, he's the scapegoat. In different sports, they're going to be the scapegoats because they're maybe like the main guy, quote unquote. And the goaltender is going to be the main guy in hockey to an extent. A lot of these plays, whenever it happens again or watch the replays of these games, look at how the other team ends up with the puck. A lot of the times, like I think it was the first one in Anaheim, the Kraken defensemen just kind of were sloppy and they turned it right over to Anaheim right in front of our own net, and it just puts Grubauer in a terrible position. Who do you blame there? Do you expect your goalie to make the 99 percentile level save there, or do you just have to look at your defensemen to be able to be better in that position, right? And so, yes, Grubauer has had some saves he needs to make. There's criticisms there. I'm not saying he's perfect. He's the golden child, but you have to look at your defensemen in the way that they've been playing. Not been good. And even Justin Schultz, one of the new signees from this past offseason, a veteran defenseman, has said, we've got to be better about not only getting in the penalty box, but just playing as a whole as defenseman, communication, not putting a bunch of guys on one side of the ice, leaving a guy open on the other. It's just been sloppy overall from the defensemen. And there are bright spots, but there's also some stuff like it looks like year one. It looks like year one, and it can't be that way considering that your power play looks a lot better and your offensive skaters look better, knowing that if your defense finds that other gear, right, if we put all the pieces of the puzzle together, this is a playoff team. I really believe that. But you got to be able to put it together. So that's where it is. Defensive things got to – it was like the Seahawks in a way. Your defense has got to improve, but your offense looks great. So that's what I'm taking away. Yes, missing the Golden Knights game – yeah, with the 18 innings and the way it ended, maybe I'm okay with that, but we'll get a big one tonight against Carolina. But let's look at this was something I might have sprung on you that's new, but with how often they played 3 games this past week, they play 4 this upcoming week. With how often they play kind of similar to baseball and basketball, I figured we should have players of the week. So we're going with players of the week here. Maddie, I mean, come on. The guy has been incredible. We got some team news here, records-wise, and I'll let Bell get to that in a minute. But I went with Maddie. I mean, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points, tied for the team league and lead in points, 1 power play assist and 7 shots. This guy, I would be hard pressed to think he doesn't win Rookie of the Year, the Calder Trophy. So, yeah, I was pretty amazed with the first 3 games and excited to see what he can continue to do as the season progresses. But not a bad selection on your end with Andre Burakovsky. Why did you go with Andre here?
Stat line as well. Very close to almost the stat line for Matty Beniers. He has 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points, 1 power play goal, 2 power play assists, and 9 shots. So yeah, they're at the top of the leaderboard there for most things, and it felt right to go with him.
Yeah, and that's, with talking about the elite level finishing, Burakovsky is one of those guys, and he showed it. I believe it was in the game against Anaheim, but he might have had another one against the Kings there. So I can only expect good things from Burakovsky. He's a guy that, coming off of winning the Stanley Cup with Colorado, he said he wants to kind of establish himself. He doesn't want to be kind of one of the background guys. He wants to be one of the main guys for this Kraken team, whether it's offensively or as a leader. So I'm excited to see what he does as well as the season progresses. But yes, we will have players of the week going forward for our Kraken here.
Okay. And moving on to some more Maddie Beniers news, as you teased already. On the 15th, Maddie Beniers was named the 7th rookie in league history to record a point in at least 12 of his first 13 career games. Also news on that day, Vince Dunn's assist on Jaden Schwartz's goal is the 100th of his NHL career, and this game marks the 600th played in Jaden Schwartz's career. That's big.
Some milestones. I wanted to, when we don't have stuff that's too big of a story, like we had Drieger's Keepers, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago. I want to be able to throw in this history stuff because, I know that a lot of the city is still learning hockey, so I wanted to sort of throw some history, some stat lines in there while we can.
I mean, 600 played games. It's
a lot of time on the ice.
Moving on to some league news here, and not very positive news. Or I guess you could say it would be positive for Ian Cole, but the defenseman's investigation has officially been closed. Cole was suspended on October 9th, pending results of allegations of sexual abuse and grooming. And the league's investigation included social media, public data, and court records, but they weren't able to come to anything substantial that proved he was guilty. So he has since been reinstated, and the investigation has been closed. Moving on back to our Kraken, their record sits at 1-1-1. Division standing is third in the Pacific. Looking ahead, they have a game on the 17th versus the Carolina Hurricanes, a 7 p.m. puck drop. The 19th versus the St. Louis Blues, another 7 p.m. puck drop. On the 21st at the Colorado Avalanche, a 6 p.m. puck drop, and on the 23rd at the Chicago Blackhawks with an 11 a.m. puck drop. Is that
that 11
usual,
one
the earlier? Yeah.
It's a bit odd. I remember the Kraken played on a Monday last year at 1:00, and I was like, what the hell? I think it was a holiday though. But just to highlight that, we just played Vegas, which Vegas is kind of expected to see a drop in sort of success this year. But Vegas is, they're still, until we can beat them, they're big brother. We're 0-5 against them all time. Carolina is a team that went well in the playoffs this past year. We played them tonight. St. Louis won the Stanley Cup a few years ago, and they're still a hard-nosed team. Colorado's the defending Stanley Cup champs, so that's not going to be any easier, and it's in their building. Chicago is an interesting case. So those first 3 games you see on your screen there, they're not going to be easy, but last year the Kraken were able to get up for these big games somehow and win a lot of them. So it'll be really interesting to see this year with an improved power play, with some new faces, Maddie Beniers, all that, to see what they're able to do against these good teams, with 2 of them at home here this upcoming week and 1 on the road. So that'll be an interesting week for our Kraken here, and excited to see how they come out with that. But I know we tease playoffs for these past guys, but here's a team that's really in the playoffs with the Reign. So I know a few people might be waiting for this part of the episode anyway for a giveaway. So we'll get on with it. So the Reign finally know who they're going to play this upcoming week in the semifinal of the NWSL playoffs. The Reign will be facing off against the Kansas City Current. October 23rd versus the Current is a 4:30 p.m. kickoff time at Lumen Field. Kansas City teams in the Reign have history. Kansas City, I believe it was FC Kansas City before. It was a different iteration of Kansas City. Beat the Reign the only 2 times the Reign have been in the NWSL title match. So the playoff history isn't good against the Reign, against Kansas City. This year, both teams have a win against each other. Both of those, one win against Kansas City was here, and then the loss against Kansas City was on the road. So it's pretty even matchup, I'd say, and it should be a good one. But we'll get to the team news here before I talk about the tickets. I know that might be dragging things along, but we have some team news. On the 14th, 3 Reign players were named to the NWSL Best 11 for the months of September/October. Alana Cook, the defender, appeared in every minute of play for the Reign in September and October's regular season contests. Her stout defense helped the team to its 3rd NWSL Shield in club history and the 1st since 2015. She helped the Reign earn 3 clean sheets in this span, including 2 of those on the road. Since acquiring Cook last year, she's just been a lights-out center back and is one of the rocks on this Reign defense, one of the better reasons why this Reign defense is one of the best in the league. Rose Lavelle was the second player on that list. Lavelle was hugely productive in the Reign midfield and tallied back-to-back games in September to help extend the team's unbeaten streak to 7 games. The midfielder was tied for 7th in total shots across the league in this span, so peppering the defense here in shots. And then Pino, I mean, it feels like we've been talking about Pino every week. Last month's player of the month, Rapinoe picked up right where she left off, scoring 3 game-winning goals and registering 14 shots to lead the Reign to the NWSL sheet in a first-round bye in the 2022 playoffs. So, and it's crazy to think that all 3 of those players that were named to the best 11 are all on the women's national team for the U.S. as well. You want to watch world-class talent, you got to go to these Reign games. I'm not messing with you. I'm not saying that just to say it. It's all true. As well as 4 members of the Reign were nominated for league awards. Voting is currently taking place. Some of that is taken from the fans. Most of it's taken from players and coaches, and then some of it from the media as well. So for Defender of the Year, 2 Reign players were nominated for that, in Alana Cook and Sofia Huerta. Goalkeeper of the Year in Fallon Tullis-Joyce, which I would support that fully.
Yes.
And not only because she followed us on Twitter yesterday, but Coach of the Year, Laura Harvey as well, which that would make a lot of sense. I just think I think maybe with some of the success that San Diego has seen, that maybe she might not win that. So we'll see. But I would, if it was up to me, I would say yes. And winning the NWSL title, I'm sure, would help that out as well. So the Reign will face the Current in the semifinal game. If they win this match on the 23rd, the Reign will advance to, I believe, their 3rd NWSL title appearance, having lost the first 2, as I mentioned, to Kansas City before, a different iteration of the club. This is a big deal. You know, we talk about a lot of our teams in Seattle being in the playoffs recently or currently. The Mariners season just ended. They ended in the playoffs. The Storm were in the playoffs. The Seawolves took it to the title match. So we've been lucky. We've had some solid success here recently. But this is a big deal. You know, you want to talk about supporting women's sports, supporting soccer in this city, just supporting your Seattle teams. You have to be there on the 23rd. Now, you can do that without having to pay if you enter our giveaway. Now, I admit, you know, I could make this more complicated, but I feel like less complicated is better. So in order to do this, all you have to, the 2 tickets to the Reign game, section 126. So you're relatively close to the field as well. I try not to skimp on these, but you're right behind one of the nets. I believe Fallon will be in it for the second half of the match. So if you want to watch Fallon up close, you know, this is another reason. So 2 tickets to the Reign game on the 23rd at Lumen Field, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. 2 tickets to the Reign. All you have to do is be following us at least one of our platforms, whether it's, I'll run the little banner across the screen on the bottom here, so it's easier to get that in writing. Whether that's Instagram at Circling Seattle Sports, Twitter at Circling Sports, Facebook, Circling Seattle Sports, or on our YouTube, which you just put Circling Seattle Sports in there. It's going to be linked in the description of this video as well. That'll count. If you are following us on multiple of these, then it's an additional entry to be able to win one of these things. Now, I'm just trying to get people out to this game. You know, I was like, shoot, I meant to do this earlier anyway, but it's always great to see the different times that people come to these Reign games and they're like, wow, I got to come to more of these, you know. So I will include some videos on the screen of where these tickets, the section here, there's where it is on location to the rest of the stadium. That's kind of the view. That's the best view I could get of where they will be. But just on the screen there, so you can keep that up. October 23rd, Lumen Field, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. This is a big match. This is playoffs. If you say you rep the city, you say you like to see this success. I mean, this is a club that's been in the playoffs the past 2 years. They've taken it to the semifinals the last 2 years. They're the top of the league table, and they have, I would say, a pretty solid chance to win the whole damn thing. So, 2 of these tickets, I'll announce this on Thursday at 5 o'clock. I was trying to figure out when a good time to be announced this with, just so people could like plan if they did win, right? Plan out their weekend. I'll post this on social media as well, so those who aren't watching the full clip or the range segment will be able to see that. But I wanted to get these out regardless. I wanted to make this right because was able. We had some difficulties with the last time we said we were going to do this, so that's been on the screen. If you need to screenshot that, whatever, write it down. We'll have it on social media as well. But really, it's as simple as following us on social media. That's really all it's going to take. So Thursday, the 20th at 5 p.m., we'll find out who those 2 tickets will go to, and we'll see out at the raid match on the 23rd. So we now will finish up with some league-related news here. Unfortunate, I know we talked about some of it last week, but more news as sort of scandals, investigations continue throughout the league. On the 10th, the NWSL terminated the contracts of North Carolina Pride. Head coach Amanda Cromwell and assistant Sam Green after a joint investigation into their conduct took place. And then on the 11th, Merritt Paulson, a big figurehead in these investigations around the league about abuse and scandals, the owner of the Portland Thorns in the NWSL and the Portland Timbers in the MLS, has stepped down as CEO of both of these clubs. So he's been a big figurehead in hiding what Paul Riley did. He's just been an overall bad guy. So it's good to see that he's been he's stepped out of his roles, but I would like to see further action take place against Paulson as well as anybody else that was involved in any of these things. So it's just, again, really unfortunate to have these things happen in this league and to such great players, just great women, just great people, and just hoping that continued justice can be brought not only to the women that were involved, but anybody else in the organizations that had to bear witness or be involved in these sort of things. So a lot of talking, a lot of smoke that took place over the weekend. We finally have a date. We're not just kind of sitting and twiddling our thumbs anymore. The Reign will take on the Kansas City Current at Lumen Field, October 23rd, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. The Reign finished the year with an 11-win, 4-loss, 7-draw record, first in the NWSL, winning the NWSL Shield. If they win, they're off to Washington, D.C. to play the title game against either Portland or San Diego. But you got to take care of Kansas City first. So that'll be a big one. And we will have this giveaway. We'll have a post about it on social media as well in case you missed that. So to quote my photographer friend Matt here, with that being said, we'll switch over to our Seawolves, who have been quiet for a little bit with some not too fun news, but it's news. So why don't we look at that, I guess? Sad face.
Yeah, some team news here to go over. On the 12th, it was announced that Kellen Gordon retired from the MLR. Gordon made 44 appearances, adding his game knowledge and skill set to our forward pack. He contributed to both of our championship titles, supported our set pieces, made 187 tackles with an 88% completion rate, and scored a try during his 5 seasons with us. He's the 24th player in Seawolves history. On the 16th, it was announced that Ross Neal would also retire from the MLR. Ross Neal made 29 appearances in the Seawolves back line since 2020, bolstering our wing and center options. He scored 14 tries, made 147 carries for 1,675 meters gained, and made 138 tackles in his 3 MLR seasons. He's the 50th player in Seawolves history.
Just it's really interesting. I just want to touch on that because I remember a few weeks ago we went over some of the a trade or two that was made by the Seawolves to lose some players, to acquire some players, some signings, and I was wondering, hey, how much more roster turnovers are going to be? This isn't necessarily roster turnover because it's a retirement, but it sucks to see. Gordon having spent time with the Seawolves over the course of 5 seasons. Neal was a guy that I sort of noted when I first started covering the team, and it sucks that he had to retire because of concussions. That's always tough. So it sucks, but obviously the best of hope to both of those players and whatever endeavors they chase after this. I noticed across any league, not just, I know a lot of the focus is on the NFL with the CTE, but in a lot of these leagues after the playing career, it's tough to just find something else to be passionate about. So best of luck to Ross and Kellen in whatever endeavors they decide to chase after this. So We will wrap up, like always, with our Seattle Stars of the week, and they're both on the Seahawks this week, which is something I didn't necessarily expect. It makes sense to me that you went with the defense, but I went with the Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker III. He's another guy that, did you know he's 21?
No.
I did not.
Another young
what's with
star.
all these people being 21 and under? It's not cool, man. Walker looks like he's primed to be the bell cow back for the Seahawks throughout the rest of the year, and I'm excited to see what he's able to bring for this offense. A balanced offense is a good offense. I think I was looking at it. I saw a picture the other day, whether it was in Snapchat memories or something, but in the O'Day locker room, there's a little printed out piece of paper that said, when you run the ball, good things happen. And I think that when you run the ball with Kenneth Walker, good things will happen. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see what he's able to do over the course of the year. And if I saw your selection a few weeks ago, I would have laughed at you. But with the way that they played,
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. So it makes sense to me, but let's take us through our thinking with picking the defense here for start of the week.
I mean, we've been talking about all these shootout games, and I think that we even mentioned it last week, was how is the defense going to respond to Kyler Murray being the running quarterback? And they responded fairly well. I'm pretty sure, if I'm correct, Kyler Murray got sacked 6 times.
I know for sure at least 5.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I've heard the quote before that Kyler Murray looks like a toddler running away with his parents' phone when he's like trying to get the ball out. But they prevented that. I mean, they stopped him from scoring altogether. He didn't get a touchdown at all in the game. So low scoring game, again, not a shootout, but the defense did what it had to do to get the win. So I had to go with the defense as a whole.
Yeah, it made sense. I mean, holding them to only record that field goal on the offensive side of the ball is big, and it puts you in position to win. So makes a ton of sense to me. So yes, I mean, we'll wrap it up here. The Seahawks winning their game against a division rival in Arizona. Had some tough games against Arizona in the past few years at home. So good to see them get that win. Sitting at second in the NFC West at 3-3. The Mariners season unfortunately comes to an end. We'll have a season in review for you next week. The Storm remain quiet. The Sounders will have a season in review for you next week as well. The Kraken continue on through their regular season, playing the Carolina Hurricanes tonight, looking at their second win of the year. The Reign play a big playoff match on Sunday to decide whether they end their season and go home or they go to the NWSL title match against the Kansas City Current on the 23rd. The Seawolves, I mean, we'll see what other moves continue to take place for them. The Dragons, we're getting whatever we can from the XFL. So until we see you next week, stay safe with the smoke. I mean, you saw I've been hacking here because of all that bad. Just looking at the weather quality has been terrible. Until we see you next week, we're halfway through October. This is crazy. I mean, God, last full week of October is next week. So until we see you on the 24th of October, hopefully with some good news, I guess higher morale. Belle Garcia, Charles Hammaker, until we see you next week, do whatever you can to make today a great day.